the belief in the coming of the Mashiach. Our ancestors have believed this through the darkest of times, even on their way to the gas chambers of Auschwitz. They sang, Ani Ma'amin, Ani Ma'amin. I believe in perfect faith in the coming of the Mashiach. And even though he may tarry, I await his coming every day. And I can tell you also, Mitch, that the belief in the coming of Mashiach is actually referenced in the Torah itself. I know that there are some rabbis out there that have told some of our congregants that Judaism doesn't believe in the Messiah. I have no idea where they're getting their information from. They've obviously not read the Talmud and obviously haven't, well, I'm not sure where they're getting their information from, but they're not reading the Torah properly. It says, for example, in the crossing of the Red Sea, which we celebrate also in the end of Pesach, this is the anniversary of the crossing of the Red Sea. You know, we came out of Egypt. The plague of the firstborn was on the first night of Pesach, on the Seder night. 7 days later, we stood at the Red Sea, and that's when we crossed. That's what we're celebrating at the end of Pesach also. When we crossed the Red Sea, the famous song that the Jews sang whilst crossing the Red Sea was, Az Yashir Moshe Uvenei Israel. Then Moses and the children of Israel will sing this song. Then they will sing. It's a clear reference to the future. There are numerous other references like this in the Torah, where the Torah deliberately speaks in the future tense. You and your children will inherit this land, even though that generation died in the desert. Right? Aaron and his sons will receive the priestly gifts, even though those didn't take place until Aaron passed away. Clearly a reference to the coming of Mashiach and the resurrection of the dead. Okay. So the first thing I want to tell you is that the belief in the Mashiach is mainstream Judaism. This is not anything recent. It's not some recent invention that was maybe influenced by Christianity or Islam. It's mainstream, basic Judaism, documented in everywhere, in every part of Judaism. That's the first thing I want to tell you. But we need to talk about, what life will be like when Mashiach will come. So what do you think about that? I mean, what an image comes to your mind when you think about Mashiach?
Well, I get this almost fire and brimstone image of the world being near apocalypse situation and the Messiah, the Mashiach, redeeming us from that.
So some end of the world kind of war situation, that's what you're seeing?
Yeah.
So basically you've been influenced by the Sistine Chapel.
Okay.
Michelangelo, right?
I've seen the Sistine Chapel.
Some day of judgment.
It is beautiful.
Some concept of a day of judgment that no one will survive, nobody will come out unscathed. Is that the kind of image you're seeing? Fire and brimstone.
But from my limited understanding, it has to do with an event, a triggering event before the Mashiach can come, and that triggering event would be something horrific.
Okay, so there is such a concept. Before we get into what actually happens, because I disagree with everything that you just said about some apocalyptic reality. Okay. That is a Christian view on the Messiah.
Okay.
The Jewish view on the Messiah is life, I'm going to say it in brief, life the way we know it right now, marriage, groceries, food, wine, pleasures of life, without mortality, without illness, without war, poverty, suffering, life the way we know it without the bad stuff. That's Mashiach, right? Very different to the Christian view of apocalypse and Armageddon, right?
Yep.
We got to speak about what it really is about. What's the essence of the coming of the Mashiach? What is that era really all about? But here's what I'm going to tell you, Mitch, that the epic event that will lead to the coming of the Mashiach is known in the prophecies as the war of Gog and Magog, or the era of Gog and Magog. Nobody is quite sure about who this Gog and Magog really is. But these two entities somehow are engaging with each other. And we've always understood it to mean that there's going to be some sort of a great war that will take place before the coming of the Mashiach.
So that's part of what I was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Many people understand World War II to have been that war, or World War I to have been that war. There are many opinions that believe that it's already happened. But there's actually a fascinating commentary he lived a couple hundred years ago, who writes that based upon a close analysis of the prophecy, it makes no mention in the book of Ezekiel of a war of Gog and Magog. He said that the epic event that will lead to the coming of the Mashiach is not a war, but a pandemic.
Okay.
A plague that will wipe throughout the entire world. That is the era that will precede the coming of Mashiach.
Okay.
Have you ever seen a time like this where people are just so focused on spirituality? People are turning to religion in droves right now. Fascinating. Millions and millions of people are turning to faith and to religion right now because there's really, you can't rely on human beings now. Nobody knows how to deal with this pandemic. But to think that it's a prophecy of a couple hundred years ago, explaining a biblical prophecy, an enigmatic one, that the era before the coming of Mashiach will be some giant plague, that's quite an amazing realization. What do you think of that?
Well, if you're leading up to the fact, Rabbi, that we're in a pandemic right now, and this could be that trigger.
Absolutely,
event,
yeah.
It's interesting.
I mean, never before have I seen the whole world waiting. You know, normally people are busy. Don't bother me, Rabbi. I got a lot going on right now. I don't have time. Now everybody has time. Everybody's focused. Everybody's looking. If Mashiach would have come right now, I think the entire world would know about it within 3 seconds. Because everybody's just glued to the media, glued to social media.
What else is there to do?
There's nothing else to do. Everybody's just listening. They're just watching. They're just waiting.
Hoping for good news.
Yeah, and everybody knows that there's this invisible virus. Everybody's sensitive to the fact that there's things around us that we can't see. There's these like the spiritual reality. I think everybody's a little bit more sensitive to. So the thing I want to tell you though, Mitch, about the actual coming of the Mashiach is that at that time, the essence of the era, what's going to change is that then we will be able to sense, to perceive, to feel the presence of God around us. Right now.
Well, don't you always feel the presence of God around
No,
you?
it takes a lot of work to feel the presence of God, Mitch. It takes a lot of work. Think about it. When you lay your tefillin, when you kiss your mezuzah, when you come to shul for a service, do you feel godly? Do you feel spiritual? Or does it take effort to like really meditate and maybe, if at all you'll feel something spiritual. You're doing a mitzvah, but you actually feel godly? Do you perceive the godliness?
When I'm doing a mitzvah, for example, doing this radio show with you.
Right.
I always feel inspired by some God, let's say, by God, to do the right thing, say the right thing, and to help people. Personally, I believe every time I help somebody, I do a mitzvah for somebody, I'm getting a little closer to God. Tikkun Olam is repairing a broken world. Is my mission. I know that's a strong Ashkenazi belief, and I'm guided by that.
Okay, but that's how you feel. It's not like there's any real perception around you. You're not immersed in a godly awareness, are you?
I don't know what you mean by that.
My point is like this. Like, for example, think of the Middle Ages, when we knew nothing about how the human body works. The Black Plague, people were dying left, right, and center. Apparently the Jews were dying a lot less than everybody else because, why? Because the Jews were washing their hands.
Right.
We always wash our hands before we eat bread, when we wake up in the morning, after we go to the bathroom. We're constantly washing our hands. The Jewish hygienic standards are actually very, very high. And that's why I guess we were dying less, which is ironic because they blamed us for the Black Death, for poisoning the water. And that's when the mobs came out and killed the Jews, right? So as we survived the plague, we got killed by the mob. But think about life in the Middle Ages and how life changed when Watson and Crick discovered DNA. When scientists discovered how germs and viruses work, suddenly everything changed. Suddenly we realized, what? There's a lot going on right beneath under our noses that we didn't even know about. But at least when we're aware of it, it changes how we live our lives. Suddenly we're more conscious of our hygiene. We're more conscious about the foods that we eat, the places that we go, the air that we breathe, water that we drink. We're suddenly more conscious because we know We have vision that's more than meets the eye. We have subatomic awareness of the molecules and the atoms and the mitochondria and the nucleons and whatever else is going on, beneath the surface, right? We now have become enlightened. Mm-hmm. Science has enlightened our eyes to what's going on all around us. Imagine if we were able to go deeper and see not only what is going on beneath the surface, but imagine if we saw why. Imagine if you could look at everything and see the presence of God creating, the energy of God actually creating that tree, that person, that car. Imagine a person that you could look at that person and see not just a person, which even 500 years ago you would see, but you would see their molecular DNA, right? Their biological makeup. That's what a biologist might see, or an X-ray technician, right? But imagine you could actually see the light of God within them. What would happen if you could see their soul? Can you imagine if you could see the soul of another person?
Yeah, how's that possible, Rabbi?
Well, ask someone 500 years ago, how's it possible to see inside the human body?
Well, they could have done autopsies.
While they're alive?
No, while they're alive.
Okay, so it might have been outrageous.
Unless they're torturing them.
It might have been outrageous to think that you can possibly know what's going on inside the human brain while a person is alive, and we've done it.
Right, but you're talking about something intangible.
Don't worry about how it's possible. God has done amazing things. You know what? We know that the soul exists because we're alive. But we have no way of encountering or experiencing the soul. Yeah. When Mashiach comes, the soul of the world will come to life. The way I see it is the transition from black and white photographs to full color photographs. Imagine you said to someone 500 years ago, or no, whatever, 100 years ago, you said, can you imagine that we have a television with colors on? With color on it, they'd be like, that's impossible. How could you possibly put color on a television?
Even to say we had x-rays and you could see the bones inside somebody.
That would be unthinkable before that was invented.
Right.
It's only impossible until somebody does it.
Okay.
Right? Point is that don't worry about how God's going to do it. Leave that to God. He's done amazing things, and he's allowed us as human beings to develop, to evolve into incredible heights that nobody would have think possible. Who would think that you could video conference with someone 20 years ago?
That was a fantasy.
Exactly. So if video conferencing is a fantasy come true, then you know what? The soul coming to being perceived as true also. In the words of Isaiah, he says it very clearly, the prophet Isaiah. The glory of God will be revealed, and all physical eyes will see that the word of God is spoken. We will see the word of God. We've been reading these verses, Mitch, for 3,000 years. What's going to happen when Mashiach comes? Life continues as normal, but we will be more conscious, more enlightened. Instead of a person walking around in a bad mood, thinking about somebody that he doesn't like, you'll look at that person, you'll see the light of God in them. That's going to be beautiful. That's going to be inspiring. It's going to be very hard to hate or to fight or to attack. We all will be drawn to a higher purpose as we realize our place, how everything fits into the bigger picture, the ultimate purpose of creation. Can you relate to this message, Mitch?
Hardly. I have so many questions for you.
I had a feeling.
So many questions for you.
All right, I just had to.
Because you're talking about a whole different way of life, and you're right. A lot of things have happened in the world, and anything's possible. I agree. However, the thought of being able to see your soul is too much for me. Too much for me. But when we continue after the break, you're going to explain that to me. But I'd like to start with this, Rabbi. Do you believe that this pandemic is a prelude to the Messiah?
Absolutely do.
Okay.
I can tell you this, that it says in the commentary that it says in the Torah that when the Jews came out of Egypt the first time in the year 1313 BCE, they were all trapped in their homes while the plague raged on outside. And the commentary from 800 years ago tells us, 800 years ago this is written, that when Mashiach will come, we also will be at a time when we're trapped in our homes and the plague will be raging on outside. That's, to me, incredible. I've never in my lifetime seen a time when Jewish people, when the whole world, forget the Jewish people, the whole world is conscious of things that they cannot see around them. The world is turning to spirituality. The world is turning to God, to religion, to higher power, to be able to help them through this terrible time. And I think that perhaps we're all in a state of awakening right now, to be able to be ready for the coming of the Mashiach. I do believe that this is certainly a precursor.
Okay, so we've believed in the Mashiach for 3,000 years?
Correct.
Okay. Don't you think in the past 3,000 years, Rabbi, other previous generations have thought the Mashiach was about to come?
Well,
what makes us different?
I can tell you that the biblical prophecies all coming to be true, fulfilled in our generation. Quick example, they shall beat the swords into plowshares. You ever heard of that one?
Of course.
So that wasn't true until like 50 years ago. As recently as like, I don't know, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, people were still killing each other for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, but aren't they still? That hasn't
well,
stopped.
Today, it is really not cool to go to war with anybody.
But
the United Nations mandate, it's actually printed on Turtle Bay, I think it is, on the, it's engraved on the wall right outside of the United Nations. Yes. This quote of Isaiah, right. Because this is the mandate of the United Nations, is to bring peace to the world. It's never been this way for 3,000 years. For 3,000 years, history was written by the victor, and the winner took all the spoils. There was no mercy for any loser. Today, are you kidding me? This is all about diplomacy, and it's about conversation. It's about countries that are channeling military budgets, billions of dollars into education and into social welfare programming, into medical support for people that can't afford medicine. It's incredible what's going on in the United States of America. I mean, during this election cycle, everyone's fighting about how they can be more helpful, right? Everyone wants to be, I'm going to give free healthcare, and I'm going to give free college. Everybody wants to give more to help the less fortunate. That is the fulfillment of a biblical prophecy, when the most powerful people in the world are saying we're going to take the largest amount of money in the world and use it to help people instead of taking advantage of them. And there's a lot of other prophecies like that are coming to be fulfilled. Give you one more?
Well, let me just comment.
Okay, good.
Yeah, sure, a lot of people are talking about free this, free that, helping the poor. It's not happening.
Okay, so maybe, just
that people talk about it.
Mitch, it's happening a lot more. What are you talking about? The government is giving out money right now to people that are going through a distressed time. What would have happened 50 years ago if people were going 100 years ago in the Great Recession, 1929, right? Mm-hmm. Was the government giving money to anybody?
How about 100 years ago with communism? Isn't that communism? There was no Messiah after communism. In communism, as in socialism, the government provides for everything.
Everybody knows that communism is a failure.
I'm not saying it isn't.
As Winston Churchill said.
But that's the same concept. There was no Messiah after communism.
Well, communism was Orwellian. That's the problem with communism. Like Winston Churchill said, that communism is the equal.
Okay, let me give you another example.
What did he say? One thing. He said communism is the equal distribution of misery, and capitalism is the unequal distribution of happiness. Okay. Right?
Listen, there's several countries.
And by the way, communism was supposed to be utopian, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
It was supposed to be. The problem was because of Animal Farm, because of George Orwell's
and communism,
Truth.
The whole Communist Manifesto was written by a Jew.
Exactly, right? And the point is that, like George Orwell highlighted, the problem with communism is that the people at the top were anything but communists. They were taking the wealth for themselves.
Right.
Right? All animals are created equal.
Really.
They were thieves. All animals are created equal, but some animals are created more equal than others.
However, there are some Scandinavian countries, let's say, that do provide everything for all their people. There's no Messiah after that. What's the criteria? Does it have to be worldwide? Is it just America? I doubt that.
Mitch, it's happening all over the world.
You're talking about something in America where people want to promise.
Well, America certainly is the world leader. Certainly the superpower of the world is America. And they're sending forces out to Rwanda and Peace Corps. Was it JFK who sent out the Peace Corps, right, all over the world?
Didn't accomplish anything.
But they're trying to help. The point is, Mitch, that you can't say that nothing's happened, nothing's changed in the past 3,000 years, that we're not more benevolent of a civilization today than we were in the past 3,000 years.
Well, naturally, we're more civilized. I mean,
but we're kinder. The goal is about charity. Today in Palm Beach, if you're not involved in some sort of a charity, then there's something wrong with you. It used to be that, are you kidding me? It's my money. I'm going to do whatever I want with it. Don't tell me to give it away.
That's because Palm Beach is more affluent. In less affluent areas, they're just worried about survival, not the next.
Yeah, but there's so many charities everywhere. Everybody's trying to help. Everybody's trying to make a difference. Everybody's looking for a cause. This is what wasn't the reality in the past 3,000 years. Mitch, today you got to admit, people would go to war all the time. The wars today are far less frequent than what they used to be. They used to go on forever, endless wars. People died for no good reason. Today, there's the United Nations, there's diplomacy, there's embassies.
There's plenty of wars. We're not involved with them right now, but there's plenty of wars.
But you've got to admit, Mitch, that the government is taking budgets away from military. But the government.
The pandemic is.
But what's this
taking away
nuclear
from
pact? What's this nuclear pact thing, Jake, that's going on? They talk about everyone disarmament, nuclear disarmament. It's about making less weapons. That's a fulfillment towards the fulfillment of a biblical prophecy.
Right, but you know that in the current administration, we've gone away from
the
agreement we already had with Russia.
I'm not saying that our president is the Messiah. Far from it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, he thinks he is.
Okay, I didn't think.
But he's even said that. However, what would be this? Here's a question for you then. What would be the trigger in terms of mitzvahs of peace or spreading the wealth? What would be the trigger in your mind that would bring about the Mashiach?
So Maimonides tells us that the world, everyone has to view themselves as an equally balanced scale, where the good and the bad in perfect balance. And one more tiny mitzvah, one more random act of goodness and kindness, unconditional kindness, will tip the scale not only for yourself to good, but to all of human history to good. You see, the way we look at time as Jewish people is linear. It's accumulative. We are on the shoulders of our ancestors. It's not that every generation starts all over again from the ground up. But every mitzvah, every good deed performed by every one of our ancestors from the beginning of time accumulates to bring this world to its purpose, which is the era of the Mashiach, when God will be comfortable, will feel invited by mankind to be revealed in this world. And that's what the Messianic era is all about. It's a state of divine consciousness, divine awareness, higher consciousness. Every single time we do a mitzvah, Mitch, as Jewish people, a mitzvah always involves a physical object. You've noticed this, right? Other religions might be a little more abstract or ethereal. But as Jews, we drink and we eat and we marry and we have children, lots of children, right? And we have to make money so that we can give charity, and we tithe and we do all sorts of agricultural. Every mitzvah is associated with a physical object. You know why? Because we're sanctifying that object. We're making that object a place that God will feel comfortable. And once there is enough physical places and objects on this earth where God has been acknowledged, that's what's going to tip the scale. That's what's going to be the tipping point to bring us to the lights going on, like moving from black and white photography to full color photography, where God opens our eyes to be able to see what we don't ordinarily see. Now, you know, Mitch, that there's a lot that we can't see around us, right? We can't see the radio waves and the cell phone waves and the microwaves and the gamma waves. And I'm sure there's many colors out there that we can't detect with our physical eye. We certainly can't see the virus, and we can't see all sorts of physical, even physical stuff that we can't see. It's too small, right? So certainly we know it's not difficult for us to comprehend that there is things out there that we cannot see. And if we have the right lens, a microscope or maybe a telescope, we can see things that we don't ordinarily see. When Mashiach comes, think of it as if we get X-ray glass vision. Like we get X-ray glasses.
If I could just interrupt you for a second. When you say we, who is we? The Jewish people or
everyone?
Everybody.
Everybody.
No matter, doesn't matter what's your religion.
Absolutely. All of humanity.
Well, every religion, everybody living is going to be influenced by the Mashiach.
Absolutely. And the world, the way we know it, Maimonides tells us the only difference between the way we know it right now and the coming of the Mashiach, at least for starters, is the falling of empires, the falling of monarchs. That's a Biblical prophecy.
And does that mean fascists also?
Uh,
Dictators?
I don't know. It's a very general statement, but I think that it's remarkable.
Because fascism is growing in the world.
But I do think that it's remarkable that we have in the recent days and weeks, we've seen British monarchs literally walk away from the throne. Right? You've had Harry and Meghan. Is it Harry?
Yeah.
Literally walk away from the throne. I
listen,
think that's remarkable.
He wasn't going to get to the throne. He's so far back on the pecking order. He wasn't going to get to the throne.
Right. Look, Mitch,
he was no future monarch.
The fact of the matter is that, you know, look at the past few decades. You've seen the fall of communism. You've seen the fall of apartheid.
Yeah, but communism dies and fascism rises.
What, fascism is alive in Russia?
I would say Putin's a fascist.
Really?
That's not the time. I mean,
you know, there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to take us over somewhere else. That's not the point. The point I'm making is there's always, you know, some war, some conflict. There's always some monarchy, okay? Not a king or queen per se, but some world leader, some geographical leader that thinks he's above the law. And, you know, I mean, that's always been the case. It will always be the case. What I don't understand is like many things I don't understand, Rabbi, but I don't see how people who think a certain way, who act a certain way, behave a certain way, how can they all of a sudden switch gears? That's what you're saying, right? Is that people that aren't concerned about Tikkun Olam, let's say, repairing the world. They're interested in repairing their own bank accounts, their own wealth.
Okay.
Those people are going to turn on a dime.
You're saying like Hamas and Hezbollah. How will these people suddenly turn around?
In Iran.
So, Mitch, here's what's going to happen. Even though we've never truly experienced this, and we have to admit the fact that we don't know exactly, right? We can only glean from the sources and the prophecies that we've been told. But here's the way I see it. When just like the advancement of modern technology, just like the development of the iPhone has drawn people away. Maybe think of it as the soccer. The soccer in England. England used to be very, very anti-Semitic. And they would attack the Jews all the time, right, with pitchforks and axes and all sorts of crazy things. But then when they got crazy about soccer, they had something else to be passionate about, right? Perhaps it could be that just like the advance of technology, where the iPhone is such an amazing invention that it draws our attention, you know, to watch the movies or Netflix or social media, and we start engaging less, worrying about who we hate, and we start more enjoying our own lives. Do you get the picture here?
Yes.
Enjoying the football game, enjoying the Netflix, enjoying the Facebook, right? It takes us away from our problems. The way I see it is that when the soul within each creation comes to be revealed, when you literally can look at a physical object in fulfillment of the Isaiah prophecy, that when Mashiach comes, we'll be able to literally see the light, the soul within every person and within every physical being. Everybody. What's going to happen is that we're going to be drawn to the light. You know, when the light goes on, the darkness goes away. When love is present and hate dissipates. So right now we're groping in the darkness. Of course, there's going to be some hate, a lot of hate. But when you turn on the lights, that's when the rats run away, right, in the dark basement. So that's the way I envision this about what's going to happen with the coming of the Mashiach. But we haven't actually spoken about the Mashiach himself as a person.
It's a person.
It's a person, not just an era. The Mashiach is a person, and we're getting some comments here on Facebook asking. People are very concerned about how will we know who the Mashiach is, and maybe there'll be other contenders or doubters, and how will we recognize the Mashiach? So I just want to address this question here on Facebook by saying that the Mashiach has some very specific qualities. It's got to be a scion of King David. It's got to be from the house of King David. He's got to be a prolific Torah scholar. It's got to be a person that's born of a mother and father, physical person, normal, natural born. He's got to be fighting the wars of God, which is an interesting concept, right? Like fighting, I guess, in defense of God, right? Or bringing spiritual awareness to the world is the way I understand it. Eventually, he will build the temple in Jerusalem. Now, that's going to be interesting, rebuilding the third temple in Jerusalem.
On the exact site.
On the site. That's going to be a very
You mean
interesting
where
piece.
that golden dome thing
Right
is?
there, yeah. It
And
might be
nobody
next
cares
to it.
about the golden
You know
dome.
what? I wonder if it could be next to it. I wonder if it could be next to it. Who knows? Wouldn't that be lovely if you had the Jewish temple right next door to the Muslim? I don't know. I have no idea how
Now,
that's
is
going to
that
pan
a
out.
requirement before the Mashiach can come?
It is, yeah. It also
That's
will
a
involve,
tricky one.
by the way, it will also involve the ingathering of the exiles, which means the ingathering of all the Jews in the world will be flown back to Israel on the wings of eagles. Sounds crazy, right?
Sounds like Game of Thrones, yeah.
But you know what? When Isaiah and Zechariah, your ancestor, your namesake, right? And Ezekiel, when they prophesied the future redemption, they said on the wings of eagles, but I believe that they were talking about Boeing and Airbus, about El Al, Delta, and American Airlines.
Okay, but
Another biblical prophecy
do
fulfilled.
all the Jews have to be in Israel and Jerusalem?
Okay, so it's not exactly clear exactly how that's going to work out, but there will be the ingathering of the exiles. All the Jews will come home, basically. That's the idea. That all the Jews will be able to come home. I guess they'll be given the option. It's amazing. You know, El Al flew some of its longest free flights. Recently, they flew a long, massive flight from Australia to bring in Israelis that were stuck in Australia. They brought in Israelis stuck in Peru, even though there's no direct flight from Peru, because they're ingathering the exiles. There's a lot going on over here these days. In the fulfillment, I'm going to tell you, 100 years ago, nobody would have understood what it means on the wings of eagles. It sounds like you're smoking something, right? But when we see airplanes, commercial airplanes, bringing passengers all over the world, you see a biblical prophecy that Isaiah, maybe 3,000 years ago, he saw something that he didn't know how to put into words that the people would understand. So he used the metaphor of the wings of eagles, right? That's what's going on over here, Mitch. Now, to answer that Facebook question, the Messiah has got to be a God-fearing person who's a descendant of King David. That's going to be a leader.
Does that have to be male?
It's not really clear if it's a male or female. I don't know. But whatever the case is, that leader is going to be one that will inspire the world to a state of higher consciousness. He will teach the world to see and perceive godliness all around them and inspire us to be able to, to live for higher values. Think of what Barack Obama did to this country. Remember how he inspired people?
I got a better one. That sounds like you're describing the Rabbi.
Very possible. I think the Rebbe is a tremendously charismatic leader who inspired a generation to return to their roots. I mean, the Chabad House movement that the Lubavitcher Rebbe inspired is extraordinary. Could the Rebbe be the Messiah? Absolutely possible. You know, honestly, I don't care who the Messiah is, as long as the Messiah comes, as long as the Messiah is able to bring the world to a state of peace and higher consciousness and divine awareness, you know, strength to that person that pulls that off. If you're asking me, I think the Rebbe is a tremendous candidate for that job. I can't imagine anybody else. So what? The Talmud explicitly states that Mashiach can either be from the living or from the deceased. It states so in Talmud Sanhedrin. It could be one or the other. It doesn't make a difference.
So you're saying...
Don't forget the resurrection of the dead, right?
Okay, so you're saying that the Rebbe could be resurrected.
I'm saying that every single Jew will be resurrected.
Oh, but only one could be the Mashiach.
Yeah,
deceased,
absolutely.
There can only be one, right?
That's fine with me.
But there can only be one.
Yeah, who would you nominate as a candidate to be the Messiah?
It would be the Rabbi.
Okay, so we're in agreement then. I mean, I can't imagine Joe the plumber, coming out and saying that he's the Messiah. I mean, listen, if he did and he fit the criteria, and if he was able to, to bring the world, to lead the world charismatically to divine awareness, I think that's terrific. But that is what this era of Mashiach is all about. It's a state of fulfillment of the purpose which we were
we
created.
don't have a lot more time. We could go on this for hours.
I know, and we got to do another show on this, Mitch.
Okay.
I think it's important.
So will it be somebody in a human form?
Yes.
Not like God. It'll be somebody in a physical human form.
Yes, son of a mother and father, physical human being. Okay. Because life will continue the way we know it, not the apocalyptic Armageddon view that you had before, which is the Christian approach. The time of Mashiach is the time of peace. It's a time of beauty. A physical world where the dead will be reunited with their souls. You'll see your grandmother. You'll see your deceased relatives will be reunited together with them, as we say in the grace after meals. As yimalei sechok pinu, then our mouths will be filled with laughter. It's an era of joy, of beauty, of purpose, of fulfillment, of partnership with God, where we won't have to ask anymore why. we'll be able to understand. It says even about, there's so much to talk about here, Mitch. It says when Mashiach will come, we will turn to God and thank him for having made us suffer during the days of exile. Can you imagine what kind of enlightenment we'll have to reach to be able to appreciate the Holocaust? I mean, seriously, that's crazy. But that's the era to which we're working, and that is what's happening very, very, very soon. I do believe strongly that the pandemic, the coronavirus, is a harbinger of this redemption. This is the reason that we have Elijah's cup on the Passover Seder table, because we believe it is imminent. So when Elijah comes to announce the redemption of the Mashiach, we'll have a l'chaim ready for him. That's why we have Elijah's cup on the table, because we believe in this faith with every fiber of our being. It's happening. It's going to be beautiful. And like other things that you never dreamed could be possible have come true. Things like the invention of the cell phone and video conferencing and commercial airlines and all sorts of crazy things that nobody ever dreamed possible. So too, we are the last generation of this exile. The Rabbi promised us the Mashiach is coming in our lifetimes. It's going to be extraordinary. This is what we're celebrating on the last days of Pesach.
Rabbi, I just want to tell you how much I respect your passion and your belief in this. And although I can't wrap my arms around it, no matter, we could talk for weeks and I wouldn't be able to wrap my arms around it. But I really respect your passion and belief in this.
Thank you, Mitch. I'm gonna take you on as a work in progress. But anyways, I want to wish our listeners a happy remainder of Passover. I want to wish our listeners a meaningful end of Pesach. And may we all celebrate next year in Jerusalem. May we all be able to dance together with the Mashiach in joy and gladness of heart very, very soon. Do one more mitzvah, one more act of goodness and kindness, unconditional kindness to somebody not deserving. And that might just tip the scale to bring the Mashiach right away. Thank you very, very much for joining us here this morning. Shalom and a happy Passover.